Welcome, everybody, to researchroadshow.com. Today is still March 1st, March 3rd, and we have with us today the great Wendy Sloan. And I asked Wendy to come on and talk a little bit about the medical hypnosis that we mentioned last week. Good morning, good afternoon, Wendy.
Hello there. Thanks for having me on.
Looks like a great
So,
day there in Florida.
oh yeah, it's kind of sunny and a little bit breezy, so it's a nice day. Vegetables are
Great.
doing good. They're loving they're loving the weather right now.
Yeah, Norman told me you
That's
were very busy out there planting the garden.
right, right. So, eating healthy and being able to grow vegetables, that's a plus as far as our own health. But we know that doctors nowadays in their program, they don't get any learning and no teaching, no, they're not required to learn nutrition in most of the medical schools. I can't speak for all of them, but that's something that's lacking in our health and wellness education of doctors. So there is a whole field of medical hypnosis that is working with doctors to overcome pain in clients or to find the real reasons for sickness and health. But I think you're wanting me to talk a little bit about more the nefarious or the off-label use of this phenomenon of our brain. So I just wanted to point
Well,
out I brought hypnotherapy by Dave Ellman. He was a person that worked with doctors to teach them about pain reduction and getting at some of the root causes of different diseases. And then Irene Hickman wrote this one here called Mind Probe Hypnosis. So you could say these two authors and people used it in a very holistic way with their clients. But now what we're talking about, I think you want me to talk about what I see as far as what happened with COVID-19, as far as how the medical establishment was used, correct?
right, but not only going back a little further to this, especially in the 80s when I grew up, I started to see that there was something that not quite right with the way the doctor was giving me the story.
Well, we got to realize like how are doctors trained and educated and licensed? They go to medical schools and who funds the wings of these medical schools and universities. They get endowments or they get money from very wealthy people that have their own foundations that they kind of hide the money that they make off their corporate products and they put it into foundations, such as like let's say the Rockefeller Foundation. They were very much involved in the medical facilities up there in New York and research. This goes back generations that this started happening. And so doctors are, you could say even as a hypnotist, I was hypnotized almost to learn how to work with people in a certain way. you know hypnosis is a phenomenon that has many different words, because you could even say that advertisers use the same phenomenon of linking products on TV images, good feelings and well-being with their products. Like the medical establishment uses different, they talk about different drugs, and then they're always showing an older couple happy, active, playing golf, dancing. They don't show somebody in a hospital bed taking these medicines. Or let's say a beer
Yeah, I
commercial. They don't show the homeless person at the 7-Eleven begging for money. They show people out having a good time with their friends. So there's a phenomenon with our brain that when it slows down or gets relaxed, we're more open to suggestion. So there's different ways of getting people. So the first part of hypnosis or getting person in the state is the induction. And you could say that a person could go to a hypnotist, for a session, or there's other phenomenons such as advertising on TV. The flicker rate of TVs kind of puts us in a alpha brainwave state. Like when we're engaging in conversation right now, we could say that we're in the beta brainwave state. But if I'm boring you, or if you heard my story, this happens sometimes with couples. You hear the same story over and over again. Your mind might go someplace else, or so it goes into the alpha state. And we go in and out of these brainwave states in our waking life, but then especially like when we're falling asleep, we go from the beta to the alpha, the dreamy, to the theta, and to the deep sleep of delta. So different things. A hypnotist can use these different brainwave states to do different work with clients. Now, what we see is there's a phenomenon called white coat hypnosis, where we give respect right off the bat. We trust, because anybody can be hypnotized as long as they're of average or normal intelligence, and they don't have any misconceptions, and they want to. Now, the thing is that if somebody doesn't trust you, they won't go into a deeper state. And so our doctors, just by having the white coat and their education, we respect the learning that they have had. A lot of times you just believe them because of their celebrity status, or because they have this degree and they know what they're talking about. So you're more likely to trust what they say than to question. Now, the news, what they've done is that they've repeated over and over again the requirements, the danger, the fear, and persuaded the public to go a certain way. And then they have the cabal, or they've chosen people that represent their point of view, and they interview them. So then everybody that people see on the news media being interviewed are those who have aligned themselves with this program. And this is how it happened, that we had this mass amount of people that took something, a vaccine, or decided to go against their own internal internal will of what they wanted, self-interest, right? Because they said, oh, they heard it over and over again. The repetition is in a hypnosis session. We call that's the work part. That's where we're doing post-hypnotic suggestions once a person is in the state. So this is how it seemed to happen. And because an agreement among many doctors, they had the influence then to say to doctors that were speaking out against this, or that had concerns about some of the medicines and some of the components that were put into the vaccines, that when they questioned it, their license were at risk. There are some doctors that have faced penalties by speaking out of the dangers that they saw.
That is very disturbing, and it's a case with a good friend of mine in Ohio. His pediatrician started to speak out and was severely reprimanded, and had to toe the line after that.
Yep. Remember those doctors that were in front of was it the Justice Building in Washington, D.C.? Some of them.
Was it the frontline doctors?
Yeah, I think that's what they were called. And I know that when that came out, I tried to pass, sent to some of my friends the information that came out, and then very soon those videos got taken down. They got censored. So a difference of opinion was not able discussion about all the concerns. So that's how they got these vaccines through, because what they said is that there was no other type of medicine that was available for people to use. Whereas some people were saying, oh, hydrochloroquine, that works well. Some people have helped their clients by using that. And because they didn't want that being put out there in the news. Now, we don't are you worried about getting a strike by talking like this?
No, a little bit, yeah. But
just
going back to the alpha and beta state,
right.
Are there conditions where they give us certain information when they know we'll be in an alpha state, like in the doctor's office, or in?
I don't think an individual doctor necessarily does that. There's a technique where you ground a person. You could put your hand on them, on their shoulder, and out of concern, like, I really want you to take this medicine. Please make sure you're going to feel so much better when you take this medicine. There's things that doctors could say to a patient when they're prescribing medicine that would help the effect of the medicine, because a lot of times the medicines have to do better than a placebo, because our minds are so powerful. If we believe something is going to work for us, we have a better chance of success. And of course, then the reverse thing we saw happen with some people that aren't feeling well. They get tested and it is the COVID, and they go into a fear panic. and it did seem that the hospitals were motivated by money. They were getting a lot of money. Was it 35,000 for
Something
people that
like
got
that.
a bed and got put on the oxygen? Um,
Yeah, I remember
so
distinctly many of my loved ones who are elderly were told, if you don't take the vaccine, you're going to die.
right.
Yeah, so
And that's
it's a complex thing to deal with, even for someone who's 25, and to be able to peer through all the propaganda is very, very hard for someone who's 70 or 80, right?
hmm and maybe that generation, maybe people dealt with other humans a little bit more compassionately in their generation, perhaps, or maybe they have more trust in their doctor. It does seem the older generation has a little bit more trust in doctors than people in their 60s, say people in their
Mhm.
80s. But then again, maybe they've had to rely on their doctors more because of health issues. And of course, I'm not trying to. I mean, there's so many wonderful doctors that are really caring and really want to do well
Sure.
by their patients. And so we gotta you know keep our hearts open to them, but we have to have our sense of discernment and what's best for us, our own intuition about what's going on, and then doing our own independent research. And it's not easy when there's an establishment in place to get what they want, and by laws. And any store, if you went to any stores, you were constantly reminded of wearing a mask, which doesn't
Hmm.
seem to slow down the transmission of germs and things like that to the degree that they were hoping for. Maybe it did slow down for a little bit, but it wasn't meant to continue to wear masks, because that hurts your breathing, and then you need your breathing. The oxygen in and out of the body is very, very important, and the capacity to do so.
Many papers came out showing the detrimental effects of wearing masks, but the like again the constant push from mass media and even most alternative media was wearing masks is good. Wearing masks protects you and it keeps grandma alive. Uh,
Yeah.
but a couple of days ago, when we talked about this doing the show, you mentioned Edward Bernays, and I've heard John O'Loughlin say his name a few times. What was his? How is
Yeah.
he
So this
tied in?
book, well, he wrote a book about propaganda and how to get groups of people to do what you want, you know, through certain methods. And I'd say the most enlightening book that's come out in a while is the whole Tavistock Institute. Really shows how the eugenics, how television is used to, um, that there's hidden messages in TV. And as I started flipping through this, as I took the book off my shelf, knowing that you wanted me to talk about this, it's like I need to read this book again. It's right there. So much of how the unholy alliance of our U.S. government with different operations that are affecting the citizens of governments.
Yeah, I thought that
You know,
the Tavistock Institute was just um, an urban legend, right? Up until maybe 2014. That's the first time I realized that, oh no, there really was a Tavistock Institute.
yeah, yep, British. And let's say just the chapters in here about the unholy alliance, killing the king, the CIA psychedelic revolution, television, cybernetics, science fiction, and the Tavistock Institute are some of the things that he talks about in the book. But flipping through it, I saw there was a big chapter, a big section on the eugenics, and that's kind of what's going on. There's like a death culture almost, or there's a viewpoint that there's too many people, there's not enough food to feed everybody. But I've traveled crisscross the United States like 4 or 5 or 6 times. It's just so many that I kind of forget all my trips sometimes. Um, but there's so much land now. Every time you pull off to get gas, it seems like one town is a little bit like another in some ways. There's all the chain stores if it's a certain size city. And so there's plenty of land for everybody. It's not everything's all developed, and it seems that the temperature wise, one thing that I noticed is that the cities are like 15 degrees hotter than when you start driving out into the country. So that's going down the kind of the Green New Deal. We just need to spread out a little bit more and really look at the quality of life. We've been kind of funneled into certain ways of being through TV, through the culture, through books, through music. At one time, people were happy to live together of several generations in one home, one generation taking care of another generation and growing their own food. And even if a family member might be a little daft or something, there was always something for them to do around the farm, some sweeping or collecting of eggs. So everybody had a place. And then the 1940s or so, families were made to feel that they needed to send their children to college or let them leave the farm life and go out onto the city. And corporate structure started just blossoming from then. So of course too is that's what happened with the medical profession. I mean, at one time a lot of women were healers using herbs and um, food and teas and things like that to help alleviate certain conditions. And through research, they looked at some of the properties of some of the herbs, and they were able to manufacture actually pills or different types of medicines to have a control. Then everything needed to be patented to make money. So we've changed from a more loving, holistic, your pharmacy being your farm vegetables to pharmacies of pills.
Yeah, that's an important point, is that somehow they took all of those things that were time tested, like family, staying on the farm and finding a way for everybody to do something productive, not necessarily on the farm, but in a family run business. And to tell them, no, you'll be happier if you go to work for a Fortune 500. You'll be happier if you have a nice car and a washing machine and all those other things.
Yep, save time, the convenience. So we've changed because of the convenience of things. This is faster, better, and sometimes it's not always. And so I've had these. I've started reading some of the Anastasia books. So a woman from the Siberian area in Russia that's a down to earth and just raising her children in a different way with animals around. So the baby sleeps with the bear. So just a different point of view. So you could say in some ways I've gone a little bit country here. But is there anything else that you wanted to ask me about hypnosis or about the hypnosis?
Do you think that hypnosis, a lot of young people in Europe are having to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, especially for the drugs, because they're having difficulty coping. Can hypnosis be used to help these young people recover from the trauma of COVID?
Oh yes, most definitely. For stress relief, giving them some skills on how to relax themselves and to see what the real issue is. What is it, that they're afraid of, going into their feelings? Maybe there's a sense of inadequacy or not fitting in or no sense of purpose. So there's ways of using the technique, working with a client that could be helpful. Progression going into the future, having them visualized being happy, feeling content with friends and family and a job. That's something that's so worthwhile, that makes us all feel good. And in this whole discussion, we're not really even talking about spiritual beliefs or soulful beliefs, like why are you here? What's your purpose? What is it that you can do in the situation that you find yourself in? So there's all sorts of uses for this phenomenon, not just to sell potato chips.
Right. I wonder I wonder how many of the guys on Madison Avenue pushing the potato chips were brought in to strategize on selling COVID.
Of course, remember there was the event 201 that happened right at the beginning of this September, actually, before it became so well known as COVID. And they were training people how to what they called flood the zone. So flooding the zone for them was bringing on celebrities, sports people, movie stars, doctors to talk about getting the vaccine and wearing a mask. And this is how it was conditioning. So this is, under the, umbrella of white coat hypnosis, you could say it was like celebrity hypnosis, over and over, repeating, and having a wide range of people. So what it is a mass movement. People are saying, oh, everybody agrees we need to do this. Let's get on. I don't want to be the person that's going to hurt other people. It's just how they use words. It becomes almost like spellbinding. And they were taught in this event 201 of, how to do this. And what that is programming. They were deciding, colluding together how to push this agenda. And somebody that looking at it like, oh, that makes sense. We want everybody to be safe. So it could, in one way, the same technique could be used for good, but then it could also be used to push down people down a path. And the reason, I guess another understanding is that when we're fully alert and we're feeling good about ourselves, and when somebody tells us to do something against our self-interest, we're like, no, I'm not going to do that. But when you're kind of lulled to sleep and information bypasses our critical factor to even think about it, it becomes automatic. Oh, the doctor says to do this. This is what we should do. And you're in a state of fear and like looking for answers. And, oh, okay, this is what the experts say, without knowing the hidden agenda and the money that is paid to people. That's a good question. I think somebody recently was asked, like, were you paid? A doctor was asked, were you paid to appear? And the answer was yes. And the danger that I see right now is Joe Biden, instead of a law going before Congress, there's some tweaking going on with our relationship with the UN and signing on with the World Health Organization. They're like taking the lead. Like any sort of pandemic in the future, it's not voted on. It's not called a treaty because that would need Congress's approval. But these arrangements are being made that we're supposed to kowtow to what the World Health Organization says. And we know that they were negligent in curbing the spread of this virus. Goes against our national sovereignty.
When you described being healthy and confident, you listen less to the white coat hypnosis. That's kind of ironic. The healthy people stay healthy, and those who are in a state of fear or confusion, they get the vaccine, and get less healthy. It's too bad.
Yes. We got to be careful what we put in our minds and our disposition, being happy, feeling grateful. Yep.
Back in Italy, when COVID first hit in January of 2020, I noticed that they had, I still didn't know what COVID was, but I noticed that they had 3 men who played TV doctors years ago in the 80s and 90s. They came out of the woodwork, all 3 of them, to say, I'm old now, I'm wise, I'm not a doctor, but I played one on TV. People respected, TV viewers respected these men, even though they know that they're actors. But they said, COVID is dangerous. You gotta wear the mask. You gotta do this.
Yep. We even think of like years ago, Walter Cronkite, when there wasn't so many different news sources. He was like one of the go-to people,
Right.
But what he said. But
didn't Cronkite work for not Bernays? What's his name? The British guy. Okay, his name's not coming to me now.
Yeah, he was connected because it all goes back to the Pilgrim Society in like the early 1900s, where they got together and realized that they would have to control the narrative, and so more and more news outlets, newspapers, and well, television wasn't invented yet, but newspapers needed to be controlled because they didn't like some of the reporting on some of the issues. So they started,
Right.
the group of them started buying up those interests, and so not everybody that works at the newspaper is beholden to the cabal, but I'm sure the editors and the owners are. So there's certain things that weren't, along the way have not gotten reported or to the extent. I've seen a
Right.
difference in my lifetime of the reporting, the type of reporting.
Yeah, so have I. I think that the old idiom "follow the money" applies here,
Yep,
and
cui bono.
if you can show that that the hospital administrators had a financial incentive, and that many other players had a financial incentive to promote an unhealthy routine or protocol, I think then people will start slowly to wake up.
Yep. But it's funny, the lag, even listening to some of the congressional testimony, how they still push the narrative, even though that it's kind of been, um, you know, the information has shown that there's been some nefarious things going on. But still, once something, that's another technique, is once something is out in the public, even if it's false in the beginning, everybody are more likely to go along with what they first heard than the corrected version of what's going on.
Right. Good point.
Yep. Later, that's like what they did with Hunter Biden's laptop story, like, oh, Russian disinformation. And so with that, then everybody hears it. So now people that aren't into the details of things, I don't want to hear that story anymore. Whatever. Why are we still talking about that? But details matter, and there's certain things like that. And so it's a lot of mind manipulation, and I guess some people that have been doing more research, we've kind of come to the opinion it's almost whatever narrative they're pushing, it's usually the opposite that's true. And when somebody says, "Oh, that's a conspiracy," no, wait a second, let's look at all the details. So, well, I need to get going.
Well, thanks, Wendy. Thank you very much,
Okay,
and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
bye.
Bye, everybody. Keep smiling. It drives the AI crazy.
Yeah, something positive to leave with, right? You are
Right.
healthy, you are free. Your intuition, your wise woman and your wise man inside of you will help guide you to information that you need. And have a blessed day.
Have a blessed day yourself. Thank you very much.